Welcome to the Success Journey Show. Let's travel together through the lives of individuals on the road to success.
Hey, what's going on, travelers? We are back in this segment here, our favorite segment where we bring a guest on to our show just to talk about his life, his journey, his success journey. And we are welcoming, and we are honored to have Wesley Belden. Wesley, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. Marlon, Ricky, it's great to be here.
Yes, sir. Man, it's an honor to have you here, man. Why don't you start off by sharing with our listeners and travelers from all over the world just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So yeah, I love that idea of traveling, right? Traveling through this world, traveling through this space, traveling through your own personal journey of growth and development. I think it's a really, really cool thing to kind of evoke that idea of moving. Now, having said that, I've moved to a lot of places in my life. I kind of had a non-traditional childhood. I lived with a lot of different people, kind of moving through, through my childhood. Never really kind of settled in a place. I lived in 18 cities in 10 states. Went out on my own when I was 16. These sort of things, they teach you, I guess, like a resilience, right? An ability to kind of adapt to new circumstances, to make new friends, to figure out what's different about this place and how you can fit into it. It also gives you an incredible frame of reference for how things shift, through a geography, through a location, through, living in, I lived in Vermont for a year, and I lived in South Carolina for a couple of years, and you see like these differences right after each other, and it was just shocking to see that, and then to see how like the world has changed. When I moved out when I was 16, it was kind of a handshake deal for rent on the first floor of a house. I was paying cash every week, and it was just like that sort of thing wouldn't really fly today. And it was just being able to kind of move out in that way or do that sort of thing. I think you were allowed to be maybe an adult sooner back then than you are now. And I took full advantage of that. I've always been really interested in what's next. What's the next process or thing. I think when I started to find some stability in my life and started to really look around, it kind of began what I look at as the entrepreneur's journey. And that's like the beginning part of that is you look at something and you say, hey, that's stupid. And then you get maybe a little bit more developed and you're like, I think I would have done that differently. And then you got to get to the point where you're like, I am going to do this differently. And so that's kind of, I think that journey that lends me, through that. And that's kind of the underpinnings of my early professional career. I went to school. I studied sociology and chemistry as a double major with a minor in anthropology. And so what do you do with this but get into finance? So I went out there and I did what I could to try and find a way in to get in there. And, I found somebody willing to take a risk on somebody like me. And that made a big difference, and that was, a big shift or pivotal moment in my life. Kind of having, that mentorship or at least that chance to try something new. And that's when I really, found my love of finance and love of kind of how, these economic systems work and kind of govern the world that we live in, and being able to understand and speak that language and then use it to affect change or to make a difference in things. I never really noticed it when I was younger, but it was always there, like when I was helping other people or doing something productive for other people, it always made me feel, a certain way. It always made me feel, fulfilled in a sense. And I don't necessarily know that I recognized it at that time because I was so struggling. I was just kind of focused on survival. But now, it's what defines my journey. What defines my it's what gets me up in the morning. It's what keeps me up at night.
Yes, sir. I know, man, there's so many places I want to go with. Your bio is so extensive that we could start right where you are right now and we could go for the 45 minutes. But definitely when people would be like, why didn't you guys ask him? Why did he move out at 16? And what led him to moving out at 16? So let's start there, or the moving around, or why were you moving around so much, if you don't mind talking about that? And then what led you to moving out on your own at 16?
Sure. Yeah. So my parents got divorced when I was young, and there was kind of a series of not super stable home environments. Ultimately, it was just the whole thing where I live with great aunt and uncles, cousins, different parents, different places. There was mothers and fathers involved. It was just kind of a mess. But at the end of the day, you kind of really can't argue with the results. I think it was a good lesson to learn. I think it tempered me in so many ways. Ultimately, what kind of catalyzed me to move out was it was no longer a safe or beneficial place to be. And it just kind of felt like, I'm old enough now where I could probably do this. I think it's a good choice to do this now. If this doesn't work out, then it's unlikely to be worse than the situation I'm leaving. So it was kind of a no-brainer. And then there was also probably a component where it wasn't really my choice. So.
Yeah. So you don't mind me calling you Wes? People call you Wes, or they always say Wesley?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good. I always ask permission, man, because I start calling you Wes, and you're like, I hate that name. My sister used to call me. She used to give me the nuggie over my head or something. So, now you said something that to me that I really want to. The backstory is good, great. Well, the backstory, it is what it is. However, you said something that really resonates with me. You don't say, well, because of all the moving around or the going to the great aunts, the stepmother, the tumultuous time. You say, well, the reason why I'm not. That was the worst time of my life, and that didn't help me to propel. You said that was you can't argue with the results, that you attribute that to the results. So what gives you that mind frame, or that when everybody else is playing the victim and saying that is what was holding me back, you're saying no, that's actually what helped me to be where I am today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of that shift from looking at it when you're younger and it's being done to you, like you are the victim. But when you are an adult and you claim agency, at that point it's kind of, well, these are the inputs. What do I want to do with these inputs?
Yeah.
And so looking at it, like what have you learned, right? I mean, I don't know. I think I got a chance to be closer with my great aunt and uncle, I think more than most kids, my age would have. And I mean, that's an experience that stretches way back. I mean, like we're talking like my great uncle worked on like the lunar landing module for Grumman. And it was like,
oh, wow.
What an amazing thing to like be able to talk to this person. And, I think it was, had I not been living with them, I probably just been like, these old people. But like, it was kind of a cool opportunity to see that. I think it lends that perspective of giving you, I mean, in that case, I think it gave me like a frame of reference for time that was maybe a little bit longer than most kids that age. I think I was it must have been in the 5th grade at that point. So I don't know, however old you are at that point. But like it kind of gives you a sense of that. And, like when you think about finance and investing and, all these different things, like you have to look at those longer time horizons. You have to start thinking about, stuff from, the beginning of your career to the end of your career, and if you have children and legacy, thinking about it in timeframes that extend beyond your life.
Yeah.
So I think that was, in that case, like that's something that I learned from that, and then, I think every obstacle probably has something you can learn from it. But it's easier to pick that and look at it in a positive light when you're through it and you're on the other side and you now can, make these choices for yourself and frame it the way you want.
Yeah, I like you brought that up. And another aspect of your story, just to go back and highlight, is you made a major decision. Even though you were on your own, you made a major decision to say, hey, let me go get finish my high school education, right? And then go on and go to college, right? Or whatever pathway it was. I don't know. but you decided to go.
It was touch and go for a little bit there. I think I graduated high school by the skin of my teeth. But there were some attendance issues, but I squeaked out, man. It was close.
I can only imagine 16 living on your own, waking up. You stayed up late the night before, or you had to probably be working because you're paying for that.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
All those things, right? The unspoken things, like, you. And that story, in order for you to get where you had to go, like, so you're in college now, you decided to go to college, you're on your own, you didn't have, like, no one's telling you to go to college, you enrolled in college, right? I'm assuming that you were financing and producing for yourself to get through college, right? And then you get through on the other side and you're like, you did, what was it? Psychology? Was it psychology? Sociology. Was one of them. Sociology. And you're like,
ologies.
One of the ologies. And then you're like, then you come and say, oh man, you found the opportunity to get into finance. So talk about, just before we talk about the entrepreneur aspect of it, let's talk about just that period of life where you went and majored in this area, focused in this area, you graduated, felt that sense of accomplishment, but then it was like, okay, what's next? I need someone to take a chance on me. Talk about that part.
It's like it's jumping from college. There's kind of a couple of jumps here, fortuitous shakes, if you will. So I graduated in high school by the skin of my teeth. I was kind of doing that for a little bit. I did not go to college right after high school. Kind of in that time frame, I reconnected with my father, who I hadn't seen in years. It was kind of like as tough of a situation as it was for me. I think it was tough for him as well. We reconnected, and he was pretty pro college, and so they focused me towards that direction, put together a plan, and helped me, get jump started in that. He's a horse veterinarian, so I worked with him as well, and so that was kind of a way that I made money on the weekends when I was in college to pay for it. I went to University of Florida for undergrad.
Okay. Nice.
Well, I was a Go Gators. Well, I was a Florida resident, so I think my most expensive semester was like $1,800, and that's because I had like 3 labs that semester. So like usually it was pretty inexpensive, so I was able to work my way through it. My dad was there to kind of lean on as well. But it was a really kind of interesting place in time where you started to feel like, hey, there actually are other people I can kind of lean on or maybe count on in some sense. And that's right about the time that I started to make my first like real friends, people that I would stay connected with forever. But, in many ways I was developmentally stunted. It was like you hadn't really had like that childhood. So you're still trying to figure out a lot of this stuff. And I think like I was on like a pre-med track because that's what you're supposed to do. And then I kind of just realized it really wasn't for me. Like, I looked at it, it didn't, I thought it was so interesting, but it just didn't really like spark in me, like, the way of saying, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like leaving the library, every night it closed. I'm looking around and like, if I don't go to medical school, one of these people is going to take my place. And like, is that going to be the worst thing in the world? I mean, like, am I going to be less good or better at following like, a recipe or a protocol or procedure to perform this thing? Like, I don't know. It just didn't really like sit with me in that sense. I wanted to figure something out that you could have maybe more locus of control and then maybe a far reaching perspective. So I took some time and I really thought about it. And that's kind of when I started to like really, I forget why. I think it was something through school, but I like subscribed to the Wall Street Journal. And so I think the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal was like delivered to my house every day. And so I was like reading it. I'm like watching this stuff, how it like works through and like, the Times is great. But like the Wall Street Journal specifically at that point, you were seeing like all of this reporting that was kind of like forward indicating. And I'm like, because this is meant to be like a financial paper, they're allowed to take like these degrees of freedom, which I thought was really interesting. And like thinking about this in the sense that it's trying to predict the future, or at least, an aspect of it to then understand and share a vision of what the future could be.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's wild. I really like fell in love with it. I kind of wanted to figure out how I could do more of it.
Oh man, I love it. Man, I want to pause right there to all of our travelers because I'm hoping you're getting a sense from Wes here, because that appetite for wanting to find something that fit you right? You saw early when you were assessing, like, man, yeah, you could have kept going to the library. You could have kept staying. You could have kept studying. You could have forced it. I believe you could have forced yourself through it, right? But really taking that time to pause and say, man, is this me, right? But then taking the initiative to try to search for things or look what makes you excited. Like connect with that thing that makes you excited. You reading these papers, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, right? And from there, you're like, oh man, I love this, right? And these are papers that you could have gotten years ago, right? You could have been reading these things for years.
There was an artifact when you were at school, like there was like a student discount. I mean, I think it was like 30 cents a day for the papers. It's like,
wow,
like, why not?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So man, you get on, you start saying, all right, you know what? I really want to go into this. I love the finance, man. So finance, like break that down for people. Like, when the finance, like, did you go become a bank teller? Or like, like talk about that for us.
So I had absolutely no idea how to go about doing this, right? Yeah. But I was like, all right, well, let's pound the pavement, let's figure it out. Let's talk to as many people as we know, like in this space. And I talked to everyone that I could find that was in that space, people that were applying for jobs. It's super cutthroat, yada yada yada. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not really like what they're looking for based on, on what I've gone to school here. So I better find somebody that I know to like give me a contact. And so, I just kept asking around and, finally found somebody that was willing to give me a shot at an internship. And, I took a shot on the internship. I don't think there was a lot of expectations there. But, I was the first one there, the last one there. I asked a lot of questions. I made sure that everybody, whether I was working with them or not, I knew them and they knew me, and we had conversations. I would take people out to lunch, all the things that you should be doing, but like sometimes it's kind of a pain. I did all these things and I really liked it and I was interested in it. Like at this point, I was doing a summer internship. I think I was working, supporting compliance on a few different collateralized loan obligation portfolios, like those things that blew up the economy. But it was, it was so fascinating to me to figure out like how that fit into place. And then, there's the other side of the investment, firm that was putting all the money to work in fixed income because it's less risky and more whatever. Yeah. It was owned by an insurance company, so they had to manage their risk and where their assets were. So that was a really interesting lesson to see the difference between liquidity and then the difference between risk and so on and so forth, and how that plays into a larger picture. That was it. And, that was this person deciding to mentor me, this person deciding to take a risk on me, to give me a chance, and then, me showing up and not making them look like a fool. I guess it's kind of.
Yeah. So you went through the liquidity and you went through fixed income or fixed finding the insurance side, had to find somewhere to grow the money, but make sure it was risk averse, right? So can you go through that for people that don't understand? First of all, I don't know if you deal with life insurance, right? But I'm sure you do, because you go through how to make somebody their generational wealth, which life insurance is a path. Can you break down how that life insurance helps somebody, and at the same time, so they could see what the life insurance company is doing on the other side to ensure that they're backing up what they're supposed to be getting at the back end?
So there's a lot of different components to it, but insurance, as a function, typically generates zero profits for an insurance company. What they wind up doing is they have access to your premiums, and then interim they can invest those premiums. It's kind of like how a bank invests your deposits.
Correct.
But because they are an insurance company, they have to make sure that what they're investing in is going to be safe enough, secure enough, and then have proper maturities to ensure that they never get into a situation in which they can't satisfy their liabilities, right? They can't satisfy your claims. So if your grandpa passes away, they need to make sure they have enough money for his life insurance policy. Or if you total your Honda Civic, they have to make sure they have enough for that. Or on a larger scale, if Hurricane Katrina happens, they have to make sure that they're going to be able to liquidate enough systemically to be able to make good on those things. And that's really, kind of how a lot of this stuff shifts, is thinking about where you need to park money to then get as much yield as you can make the money as secure as possible, and then also making it liquid in case something like that happens. And so that was a really interesting education to see that, that difference. Because I mean, looking at these things, like we were ripping like 20% returns, and like, why isn't all the money here? Like, well,
yeah.
In case something happens, and it was really interesting. And shortly thereafter is when the financial crisis of 2008 happened. And so like seeing that, like understanding how these systems work, these intertwined, I call them tightly coupled, weekly structured, independent or interdependent systems. Like one thing collapsed and then the next thing collapsed. It was just so clear that it was a contagion through and through. It's not too dissimilar to what we've seen recently with these regional banks and SVB.
Yep.
And again, like getting back to the idea of ensuring that your investments have the proper maturity to match up with your liabilities, and that's really kind of one of the core tenets of insurance investing. But maybe would have been a nice thing for people at SVB to be focusing on a little bit more.
Yeah, don't buy stuff that the inflation is going to affect you very much. But so now, being that you were able to see what went through at 2008, right? Being on the financial side, how comfortable do you feel with what's going on right now that there won't be another crash? Or are you saying there's going to be another crash? I know there's crashes in some areas, but just like for me, and I don't want to lead the answer. For me, I know when 2008 happened, it was like for a less of a better analogy, house of falling cards, or how do you say that? Is that I'm saying it right?
House of cards.
House of cards. Yep.
One card built on some shaky sand.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it wasn't really even that one vertical fell and then all of them just start falling. Compared to now, commercial real estate is kind of taking more of a hit, but you'll see residential real estate going up. How do you feel with what happened in 2008 versus now, and what are some of your predictions? Once again, before we do this, anybody that's going to make any investments or any moves based off of listening to our podcast, we are not telling you where to go place your money, how to feel about the economy. We are just here pontificating based off of our analysis.
I think Mark Twain said it best. He said, predictions are really hard, especially about the future.
Correct.
And that's very true. I think I approach these sort of economic cycles, it's the idea of saying, like, if your goals have changed, then you need to make a change. But if your time horizons are the same and your goals are the same, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think we're going to have several recessions between now and the end of my career. I don't necessarily want to time them or get out or jump, because you really can't. You look at last year was brutal in the markets, and then there was kind of like this resurgence. And if you had taken your ball and gone home, you would have missed out on a lot of that resurgence. You really can't. For me, it's like the long bets, the big bets, the ideas of momentum, right? Like, that's what I'm really interested in, is looking at momentum. So I believe that America is going to be here still running its economy in 20 or 30 years. The answer is yes. And if that's the case, that's where I want to put my money. Agnostic of ups and downs, and now obviously, if you're looking to put a down payment on a house in the next 6 months, you got to start thinking a little bit more about, how much cash you want to have exposure to markets. You want to make sure that you have that money in access. But, for me, I'm thinking, I gotta be honest, I'm thinking 125 years in the future. I want to think about, my kids. I think about their kids. That's, when it comes to finance, what I'm looking at or thinking towards is setting that up and having that move, in parallel to what they're doing in their lives, and making this something that, is additive, right? So it's something that is working in the background of their lives to support them in a better and stronger way, and hopefully doing that for their kids. And I don't know. So I think of these time horizons as being a lot longer, and I think that makes it easier to focus on the idea of legacy. It makes it easier to think, focus on the idea of I don't know. I think it makes you make smarter decisions.
Yeah.
Term.
No, I'm glad you said that. I've been in a lot of conversations with Marlon. We always talk about this. not making decisions for just tomorrow, but making decisions for what's going to happen 20 years from now, 30 years.
I spent a lot of the early years of my life making decisions, focused on this afternoon.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
I don't want to have to think like that anymore. I don't want to have to, it's
you're
you miss a
absolutely
lot
right.
that way.
Exactly. And granted, some people, you have to live day to day, right? Just based off your circumstance, right? You're all right, I'm making a decision. What am I going to do? How am I going to make it here in this afternoon? How am I going to do this? How am I do that? Like, everything is so present in your life, but you hope and you pray that as you're making these decisions, it's opening you up so that your horizon can broaden, right? So now it's like, okay, yeah, I may be in crunch time now. I may be looking at this every single planning for today or tomorrow, but as I'm growing, as I'm learning, as I'm applying, as I'm working, my horizon starting to stretch where it's like, now I can think about next year. Now I can think about 5 years from now. Wait, you know what? I can make a decision today that's going to impact me 20 years because, one, I have experienced, okay, let me not lead it, right? So what type of qualities or decision making, or I don't even know what the right say, or mindset do people have to be in to be able to transition from that daily planning thinking to that more futuristic thinking? Like, what would you say in regards to that?
I mean, it's maybe not directly here, but I think it applies to almost everything. I think curiosity is the most important quality when it comes to gathering information, putting together a plan, and then, envisioning a future, right? Like having that curiosity to learn about different things, different aspects, like figuring out things that, you didn't even know were possible, yesterday. Now, is a possibility. So it's in your plan, it's in your dream, it's in your vision, and I think that's kind of I don't know. You just always got to keep figuring out what's out there, what's next, what's the thing, what's the new thing that's worth it, what's the new thing that's not worth it. But it comes from curiosity, right? I mean, I think like looking at, nothing you want is on your sofa, right? So you got to get out there and get a sense of the world, get a sense of what's out there.
Yeah.
But I think like doing that, I don't know, I guess like having an idea of what you want and when you expect to have it or when you want to have it, or that's a big part of, I guess, knowing what you want is what time frame it's going to be. I guess if you can understand where you want to wind up, that makes it easier to make decisions now, like having an idea of where you want to be and then making sure that you're thinking about that while you're making decisions now maybe helps. But again, you sometimes you do have to think about the short term. I mean, building companies, I've had to think about the short term instead of the right thing way too many times, but like that's the reality of it. Like you got to move, you got to keep things moving.
Yeah.
But,
as you said that, you're talking about building companies. You started and founded a startup during one of the most, I would say, life-changing events for all of us that are alive today. I don't think anything can face that. Talk about being able to be in a position to do that, right? And what gave you that thought of, hey, let me go and start my own startup? Or just to add more to it, wasn't even a thought that maybe it was just timing that COVID happened when you was already in motion to do this?
COVID definitely happened when it was already in motion. It was wild, but again, I think not to be all like sunshine and Skittles about things, but there's a lot of things about the pandemic that I think were really beneficial to me, as I was starting this company and scaling this company and building, this company. It made it a lot easier to stay focused. It made it a lot easier to kind of, be, present in what I was doing. Right. And you find, it was almost like my escape, going to the office every day. Like, and, I was going to the office pretty much every day during the pandemic. The building was completely empty. I'm walking around barefoot. Like it was, it was like some I Am Legend stuff for sure. But it was wild. But it allowed you to focus on things and look at stuff. And also more of our lives shifted online I never really thought of myself as like a gregarious person, but like I just found myself so, I guess, bored and isolated that I wound up having all these conversations with our early customers. I mean, like I was just like calling them out of the blue, like, "Hey, so what's going on?" And they're on the other side of it too. They're probably bored too. They're like, "Oh, you know."
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it got a chance. It gave me a chance to really get to know, my customer and get to know, the people that we're working with and what their worlds look like and how we can help and, really understand what that means. And that's been the greatest, honor of my life, to work side by side with, these customers, these parents, as they plan the future for their children. I guess a little primer at this point, the product that we had launched was a shareable college savings fund. So basically the premise of this is that today's young parents, their financial picture looks very different than it did a generation ago. They're paying off student loans. They're trying to hit their employer's match, maybe save for a down payment on a house. There really isn't much left in the budget to invest in their child's college savings fund. So you kind of miss out on the compounding growth and returns of a 529 college savings fund. So our plan was, hey, we're going to make this easy for those parents to set up this plan, and then we're going to make it really easy for them to get their friends and family to contribute. And so we just launched this product as quickly as we could, mostly for my friends and who were having kids at that time. And we started scaling it out there and getting it in front of people. And we had this crazy adoption. People were signing up for these plans, getting them. They were inviting their friends and family to contribute. During the pandemic, I think more and more gifts were going online instead of, like physical gifts. Online. So that was a huge boon for us. It was wild. And like you start looking at the numbers, the average 529 plan has less than 1% of all deposits being gifted. In our plans, that number is closer to 60%. So you're talking about parents that never would have had this plan with dollars in it that never would have been there, compounding and growing over time, ensuring that those kids, when they graduate college, they'll graduate better than our generation did, with less debt or free to pursue what they want to do. And I mean, what's better than that,
Yeah.
100%.
It just got us going. It's like,
Yeah, 100%, because I'll tell you, a leg up, I'm military, so I did all my college. I have my MBA, but I done all my college in the military, so the military paid for my college. My wife, she's a basketball star. I'll say it under my breath, right?
Sure, it is.
She got a chance to go to college for free, right? D1, ECU. Went to ECU for free and played ball there, played ball overseas and stuff like that. So we together, we have no college debt. However, some of my other friends, they're doing great
like
financially, but
yeah, talking about me, Wes.
Hey, Wesley, I said some of my other friends. I didn't name no name.
Oh, Ricky.
I didn't say anything.
Talking about me, Wes. Yeah, like, man. Yeah.
Right. They're doing great for themselves, but they still have that the grim reaper of that college debt is still on their head. Yeah. And
it's 43 million Americans with 1.75 trillion in student debt. I mean, it's Ricky, you're in good company. There's a lot of us out there. It's
so the early plan, I'm gonna tell this. If you are listening to this and you're like, oh man, I love the story. This is the part that you stop. And we usually do this at the end, but I would like for you to even go more in depth. Tell us what's the name of the product, where they can find it, everything. Before I know we're gonna do that at the end, Ricky, but I just feel compelled, here.
You do it right now.
Let's rock it out, because I think this will help a lot of parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that product is called ScholarRaise. You can find us at scholarraise.com. But that was the first product. That was kind of the catalyst of getting to understand and know these parents and really understand this larger subset. I mean, we're saying like how it's different for young parents today. Well, it's different for young investors today. When you look at how wages have remained relatively static in the face of healthcare, childcare, education, living expenses, food, energy, all of these things have outpaced, all the things you need to be middle class, right? All of these things like have just dramatically outpaced wages. And when you look at this, it doesn't really square, right? Because like productivity has continued on its upward march, but wages have not kept pace with that productivity. So that money is recapitalizing somewhere. It's probably the United States equities market. So we were trying to like understand how we can help more in this space, help this unique audience. And one of the things that was continually cropping up as we were having these conversations during the pandemic was, talking about like how their parents, they would save $20,000, something like that. They would go to the bank and the bank would give them a note for $500,000. They'd buy a house for $500,000. 30 years later, that house is worth 1.5 and they have this incredible nest egg, or it's 200,000 and now it's worth 800,000. It was just basically this unbelievable exposure to a large asset that appreciates over time. And you have the added benefit of not having to deal with rent and so on and so forth. There was no where you live. Well, increasingly, that's less and less likely for this generation as they move to cities where real estate has become so expensive. You now have mortgage rates going up, which means it effectively increases that note, which means that you're having to buy a less expensive house, which means that house doesn't exist anymore. And it's just kind of this really, really rough situation where that accidental accretion of equity and wealth is no longer happening for this generation. So we're building a product where we're basically producing that same sort of wealth creation, but instead of using a house or real estate, we're using the United States equities market. So we are doing for stock ownership what the mortgage did for home ownership. And it's really just a way to turbocharge these compounding returns for this young investor early in their wealth creation journey.
I like it. So now so I'm gonna be on this side. I'm not knocking your product. I'm not saying anything bad about your product. I'm showing the people. So if they're like, when they hear you explain and answer the questions that I'm gonna present, they'll be like, okay, let me call Wes tomorrow because I need him, right? So what you see is a lot of hedge funds steered away from really some of them even steered away from going to the market, and they steered to the housing market and building out a whole complexes, developments and everything like that. How are you using the equities within the stock to be able to come up with a great yield so that we'll know that person's money can multiply whatever X at whatever time they need it?
So first of all, that's wild about these hedge funds going out there buying all these properties. It's in a lot of ways kind of a really big reason why homes have become so unaffordable. And they were saying in 2022, 1 out of every 3 homes sold in the state of Texas were purchased by an investment firm. Single family homes were purchased by an investment firm. So that's 1 out of 3 homes that you can no longer purchase or rent from an individual or whatever. It's just it's absolute insanity. We're producing this world in which you will own nothing and you will like it because they tell you you will. It's a rough situation. The investing principle or hypothesis that we base our investing journey on is we basically buy the entire United States equities market. So we don't pick and choose different stocks. And so when you look at that over, the vast time horizon, you're looking at like 10%, in aggregate, 10% returns every year on the S&P 500. So that's the benchmark that we're using. That's what we invest in. But the difference here is that you get that compounding return of a large initial position from day one. So kind of those returns are basically catapulted through. But some of those firms that are tied to real estate, but that's the idea is that we're industry agnostic, we're sector agnostic. So we're not trying to plan as to whether or not residential real estate is going to take a dive while commercial is going to go up. We don't have any such hypotheses or theories about where the market is going, except we believe that it's going to be here and in a larger way in 20 years than it is today. So we're very boring investors. We don't do anything with crypto. We don't we don't have the hot new tip that we heard at the country club. It's really boring stuff. But you know what? It's the boring stuff that like needs to be at the base of your investing journey. You know, I think kind of having these things organized and having them at the base of your portfolio is a really healthy place to be. If you want to start getting risky about things, you know, on top of that, that's a great way to learn.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to learn about cryptocurrencies, really, you got to get into them. Just maybe don't do it with 80% of your investable powder. You know, maybe do it with like 2%. You know, learn the thing, and you know, you have the exposure. Maybe it pans out, maybe it doesn't. But I mean, this is meant to be a really boring long-term investment product. So you're not going to see massive swings. You're not going to see crazy things. It's just the structure of it. And again, getting back to the hypothesis of the 1970s, when productivity continued to grow up but wages remained static, that increase of value was being transmitted somewhere, and it was being transmitted to those that owned shares in this company, the people that owned the company. And so what we were looking to do is make more people owners in more companies in a more meaningful way. This system is so primed and it's so powerful to deliver and transmit value from the outputs of these firms to the owners of these firms. You can't change that. Too many people are invested in it. It's too powerful. What we're trying to do is get more people there, get more people into this table, take advantage of this wealth creating tool. And so it's just the way that it's structured, you know, everything from the way that you pay taxes on your wages versus taxes on your investment income. It's all benefited towards this. We're just making more people involved in this.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. It's very true. You know, I've seen a lot of, or done research, and it said if you were investing, of course, 2008 is an anomaly. When we took that hit, but if you're just investing in the Dow and the S&P 500 over 20 years, you're guaranteed to get that 10%. Guaranteed to get that 10% return.
I mean, in aggregate, historically, it's been there, right? But yeah, I mean, it's factoring in those rough years like 08, 09, but you know, it's also like those boom years where, you know, it was rebounding. Correct. Or you know, it's factoring in that bounce that happened when COVID, I mean, the bottom fell out of the market in like 3 weeks during COVID. And then it was this unbelievable march back to
shot right back up.
normal.
Yeah.
Well, quantitative, the Fed Reserve understood what they needed to do in terms of quantitative easing to make sure that it went back up. So, but one thing I wanted to, so how do you combat when somebody walks into your office? I have my family. My wife is dressing her sundress and she's looking all sweet. I'm like, babe, today we're going down and we're going to have Wes talk to us and he's going to have us invest. But while we're in the car, we heard Dave Ramsey say, pay off everything and do it right now. And that's how you get financially free. And then when you sit down in front of you, the wife is saying, well, he's talking about 20 years, babe. And I just heard this guy talk about we could get financially free in a year if we just pay off everything. How do you combat that? Or what do you do in order to help that family understand where they are and how they're supposed to get to where they're supposed to be, financial freedom?
So, I mean, you got to look at it and say, like, everything has a cost, right? There's an opportunity cost. There's a real cost, right? So that note on your car has an interest rate. That interest rate is something that you're paying for not paying that off, right? There's a note on your house. That interest rate is something you're paying for not paying it off, right? And so you can rush to pay all of these things down and you'll be out of debt. And I think we can all agree that's a much better place to be than being in debt. But you also have to look at it in the greater sense of the opportunity cost, right? We were mentioning that for something like the S&P 500, it's an average of a 10% return every year. Now, of course, good years, bad years, but in aggregate, that's a good rule of thumb. So if you look at it and say, okay, my mortgage has, 3.9 on it, right? So maybe letting that money sit there and cost you 3.9 Well, you can put other money into the market that's yielding something like 9% or 10%. The spread is the difference. And it's looking at the idea of trying to get to zero or trying to get, beyond, right? Like get past the space. Like, yeah, it's something you have to look at. And again, it's a very personal thing. It's what you're comfortable with. Some people cannot, they cannot relax or sleep if they're in debt. But also, like, frequently, I think staying in touch with that, and if that is really important to you, when you get out of debt, then make sure that you don't get back into debt.
Yeah, you never go back.
It's like debt can be a really positive thing for somebody that can tolerate or deal with it well, or has
Correct.
But for other people, like, if it's keeping you up at night when you have normal, like, healthy debt, like if you have like a car loan and that's bothering you, right? Or you wish you could pay your mortgage off faster and that's bothering you. When you do pay these things down, don't buy a new car. Don't understand that about yourself, and then maybe just invest. And I think that's maybe I don't know. I think it's. Yeah, I think buying new things is not always a great. I know it feels good in the short term, but
we are with you. We are with you.
My car is 11 years old, and I love it. I love it. Like, there isn't a car out there that I want instead of my car. Like, I love it. And I don't know. I haven't had to pay. I don't know how long it's been paid off. It's been paid off for a long time.
Yeah. But Wes, why does the car have this? This is what Rick and I are always talking about. And we talk. People, our wives probably think we're cheating on them with each other because we talk to each other
talk more.
Like, we really have a morning call when I'm driving up. If Ricky doesn't call me in the morning, or I don't call, I don't know if he feels this way. We're gonna find out.
Like, man, I haven't talked to him forever.
Yeah. If Ricky don't call me in the morning when I'm driving up to work, I'm like, okay, all right. I'm gonna have some words with him. But Rick and I feel like, why does a car define you? Like, why, if I'm driving a 1991 Honda Accord and it works, do you think that I'm not successful just because I'm in a 1991 Honda Accord? But I can afford, like you said, I can afford to do other things. Why do you think people that mindset is? What you think drives that?
I mean, I think it maybe stems from, the 1950s were very much a car culture. I think that kind of persists, but I think more recently, I think we're less of a car culture, but we still look at cars as a status symbol along with everything else.
Yeah.
We've created this consumer. I mean, we've always been a consumer-based economy, but it's really, really become
really ramped up.
Efficient. You look at, like, the algorithms on social. It's incredible. Like, the influencer lifestyle, you see all these different things, and it's like you have a greater sense of what is out there, meaning you have a greater sense of what
you don't have.
But also the same sense, like looking at what you have that is what you don't have, and then the benefits of it, right? Like, the benefits of not having a car note. Like, I mean, I don't know. And you look at it and say, I mean, again, here's the creativity, like envisioning yourself and trying to really put yourself in that position of what it would feel like to buy and have that new car 6 months down the line when you're making that payment versus the car that you currently are driving, which maybe is less exciting, but like doesn't do that. So I think having that ability to envision that and really get a sense of what's going to make you happy, instead of just kind of what's looks sharp and shiny right now. And again, it's that long-term thinking, but we're really bad at this. I think we're really, really bad at long-term thinking. We're really bad at, I mean, like, even like compounding returns, that's the basis of our new products. Everyone understands compounding returns, but you have to visualize it to really actually understand you get it. Your money makes money.
The rule of 72, but you don't want to do it.
You don't really get like how it moves, it's wild stuff. But yeah, I think having that creativity to envision yourself in these different scenarios, if you make these different choices, and then try and figure out, I don't know, sometimes doing nothing is the really fun and cool choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I love this, Wes, man. This has been a great conversation. Marlon and I, we talk about these aspects of life all the time. And sometimes I think we even overanalyze and try to figure out why people are doing this or not doing that. And which is another whole study in itself and conversation. But I love the aspects and what you really touched on today. And the thing that resonates with me, and I hope it resonates with our travelers today, is just that the long-term planning, looking ahead, like what do I want? What decisions am I making today that's going to impact me in the future? And how do I get myself in a position to where I can look for a forecast, right? Forecast for my life. That really resonated. And before we go, I really want you to make sure that you restate the products that you have, just in case someone did not rewind it or write it down when you said it the first time. And then also where people can find you, and all the different materials and things, or consultation, whatever it may be, that people can go ahead and secure those services. So I'll let you do that now, then we'll close it out.
Sure. Yeah. So our college savings product, you can find it at scholarraise.com. That's SCHOLARRAISE.com. So it's 2 R's there in the middle. That's our college savings app. We're working on a high yield savings app, and then you can join the wait list for our Raise financial product. That's the Raise investment product that we're mentioning, which is doing for stock ownership with the home mortgage and for home ownership. You can join that wait list or learn more about the product and us as a company at raisefinancial.com. My email address is Wesley, WESLEY, at raisefinancial.com. Always excited to get emails from new people and understand more about people's journey and how I can help. Our Instagram handle is Raise Financial. We usually have great stuff going on there. Sometimes you can see what we're doing at the office. Other times we provide value as far as, different perspectives or things that you should be looking at to plan for your financial future. That's a great resource. We have a lot of fun there. Those are probably the main ways, the best ways. Yeah.
Love it. And the last thing I'll ask you here, sometimes we get a chance to ask our guests, and it'll be our last question for you today. If you could go back to a point in life, I would say, you know what, and just out of curiosity, how you would respond to this. The 16-year-old that went off on his own and, made that first payment of rent, right, in cash. If you had like 60 seconds to go back and talk to that Wesley back then, knowing what you know now, what would you say to him?
Probably say it's going to be all right. Maybe like be a little less angry. It's going to be fine. Also, don't beat me up, because I think 16-year-old me would probably. What's this old man trying to tell me something? But that's probably where we go. It's going to be all right. Like, just kind of, I think my superpower was always kind of just moving forward and just moving and just kind of, I never quit. I never wanted to quit, but I think it was at that space, I think a lot of it was survival based, or just trying to figure out like the short term and the near term. A lot less it was about planning. Planning for a future that's, it wasn't really something I was focused on. But I think it's kind of, it's all right, man. It's just hang in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Hey, travelers, man, we are coming to the end of another show, man. And like always, we really just appreciate Wesley for coming and spending some time with us today and just sharing his story. Man, we got a lot. There's so much more conversation to be had, even around what we talked about here. But why don't you guys take a moment, go to his website, go to his social media, go check out the products that he has here. If you're not in a position to do it, or you not need, and you're listening to this, I guarantee you there's like 5 people in your phone right now that definitely need to hear this episode. So why don't you just share this with them so they can hear it and they can put themselves on a better track. But we're going to let you guys go today and let you guys know that we will be here again next week at the same time on the same place on that Success Journey Show. Everyone have a good one. Peace.
All right, one love.
You've been listening to The Success Journey Show, where your dreams, drive, determination, and diligence are the foundation to success. For more information, check out thesuccessjourneyshow.com. The Journey Squad is here helping you to your destination.